Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Feels like I ran in here to get started, but I'm feeling good. You ready?
We are ready. We got a great show. We got two outstanding business leaders. We got a great conversation teed up. Going to dive into a lot about the coffee industry, coffee logistics, and a lot of coffee tech, maybe logistics tech, freight tech, a lot of observations in that space. So it's all about transportation and logistics. And I hope we're going to see our friend Jamin, who's kind of become our resident expert in that space. Right,
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, we're glad to have him because he was an expert before. Now he's our expert.
Yeah. Well, to our listeners, welcome to today's live stream. And we want to hear from you. So get ready to share comments and questions as we pose those to our guests here. Hey, the first attendee, right on time, Mr. Benjamin Goldklang.
Yeah, BG.
So he says, greetings from Queens, New York, where his new
gig is, man.
Yeah, we're going to have to lose the new because before long, it's going to be tried and true, been there 1,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he should be vice president soon. Don't you think?
Right. We're throwing down challenges, Mr. Goldklang, but hope you're doing well. Great to have you here. Vittori from via LinkedIn. Great to have you. Emilio Zavala. Great to have you here via LinkedIn. And you see what I did there, huh?
Yeah.
Danny, great to see you via LinkedIn. Hey, our friends over at DFM Data Corp. We enjoyed having Michael on the show, Michael Darden, a few months back. One of our biggest episodes. It really resonated. So, all right. So let's do this. Real quick programming note.
Sofia's commenting on your cap, by the way.
Sophia, thank you very much. Hopefully your ears were burning because we're going to be sharing at the end of today's show. We're going to be sharing some great analysis you provided on yesterday's webinar. So stay tuned.
Everybody button up. Sophia's watching, so that's right. Got to be our best selves.
And this cap has special meaning, significance today, by the way. The Braves are playing, just about to start the game. The game 2, they won yesterday. We're going to talk more about sports in a minute. So I'm doing my part.
Wrap it up today.
Hopefully. All right. Hey, real quick programming note before we bring our featured guests on. So if you enjoyed today's live stream episode, be sure to check out our podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. You can just search for Supply Chain Now. Today, Greg, while you were sailing, we were interviewing a wonderful thought leader from Canaxis, Ann Robinson, PhD, their chief strategy officer. And Greg, I'm gonna tell you, when I left that interview, I think I earned 3 new degrees. I mean, she really bright. But you know what? The cool thing about that, Greg, is she kept all of that at a level that even the
any of us could understand. That's
right.
Beautiful.
It was a great episode. So y'all check that out. That's what we published today. You can check it out and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. So, Greg, let's say a few hellos, and then we're going to welcome in Eric and Enrique.
Yeah.
Daria, welcome here via LinkedIn. Of course, we said hello to Sofia. Deepak via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. Lamas via LinkedIn. Good afternoon. Great to have you. Gary Smith. Gary Smith is really, he's provided some great feedback on This Week in Business History. He's also, Greg, a fellow. He spent a little bit of time at Winn-Dixie, which was a bigger grocer retailer.
Yeah, of course.
Years ago when I worked there as well. My first job, $4.35 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, $4.35 an hour.
Man, that's good money back then.
I guess.
My first job for minimum wage was $3.35 an hour.
Wow. So, okay. You got me beat.
That's because I'm older than you are.
And finally,
so Gary and Benjamin and one other person representing New York today. So New York is in the house.
They certainly are. Certainly are. So Benjamin says, still learning how to file paperwork for customs. Once I get that down, I'll be VP Supply Chain Now. Good stuff. Hey, you're too bright. You'll figure it out a lot quicker than Greg and I ever did, probably. And then one other shout out here, Chris Jolly. He's got a great freight podcast.
Yeah.
And clearly he's got some great merch too. I saw some of his caps getting disseminated. We're gonna have to get on the distribution list for that.
Yeah.
Greg.
Yeah, I'm always down for T-shirts, Chris. It's not saying I can be bought, but I can.
And Sylvia, of course, you can't have a live stream without the incredible jam manufacturer based in Charleston.
Yes, and back in the States, so I feel safer now that she's here.
That's right. That's right. All right, Naveen and Rahul, great to have you. And then finally, Neil. Hey, first timer. Neil,
all right,
from Philadelphia.
I knew pandering to coffee would work, right? You had me at coffee.
So, Neil, welcome to this live stream, and great to have you here. Look forward to your participation and your perspective. Okay, so with no further ado, welcome to everybody. Let's bring in our two guests. Are you ready, Greg?
Yeah, I'm really ready because we don't get to hear from, we get one of these guests on the show quite a bit, but we don't get to hear so much from his expertise. So I'm really, really looking forward to the community getting to hear from him.
We are too.
Notice I didn't give him away by mentioning his name.
Good.
Not bad. I'm learning. 500 episodes. I can be taught.
So today, to our audience, welcome in Eric Johnson, JOC's senior editor for technology, and Enrique Alvarez, of course, managing director at our good friends at Vector Global Logistics. Good morning, Eric and Enrique.
Morning.
Eric, what do you think about that swoosh?
Oh, I like that entrance.
It's pretty cool, right?
That was pretty cool. You got to get Nike to be the the apparel supplier.
I like the way he thinks already.
Yeah.
I do too. So what I also love about Eric and Enrique, of course, is the repeat guests. We love repeat guests. We were just kind of talking about the last time Eric was with us before the world changed, back at a EFT or now Reuters event here in Atlanta. And had a great show, resonated really well, and it's great to have him back to share some of his observations. So before we give our audience a chance to get to know Eric and Enrique a little bit better, we got to talk about that Lakers game last night, Eric. So what happened?
Yeah, sorry if my eyes are a little small today. I was staying up till midnight to watch that. So I grew up in Southern California. I grew up watching Magic and Worthy and the Showtime Lakers. So I'll forever bleed purple and gold. So it was a good night. It started off a little rocky, but they went on a run midway through that kind of, decimated Miami a little bit. So we'll see. That Miami's a really resilient team. So I'm interested to see how they kind of bounce back tomorrow. But I
am too. I really am too. And the Showtime days, the Lakers versus the Celtics, of course, the Lakers versus the Bulls. And did the Lakers play the Pistons one year, or am I thinking?
That more than the Bulls. They had I think 2 or 3 finals with the Pistons. So that were like
that was the Bill Laimbeer and Zeke days.
Those guys were savages, but
they were Dennis Rodman,
the bad boys.
I also have to point out how heartbroken I was to see the Celtics lose in the Eastern Conference Final.
I'm sure you were.
That team lost. So
well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Magic Johnson is still the only championship team player in the NCAA to play all 5 positions. Remarkable athletic talent. And, I mean, one of the most iconic personalities, of course, in sports. So, Eric, great to have you. And Enrique, I know, of course, in sports here in our neck of the woods, the Braves are playing right now, and we were celebrating that Game 1 win earlier, right?
Yeah, no, I got to confess that I'm not like a huge baseball fan. My sport's soccer, and I love soccer, and we're having a little of a rough time with the Atlanta United as they kind of rebuild the team and bring a new coach and start figuring out what they're going to be doing next. But definitely great win for the Braves. Definitely cheering for them. Would be great to see them back in the World Series.
Absolutely, great for the city. Great for anybody, any sports fan.
It feels like we deserve it, don't you? I mean, it's just about time. We've gone through so much. The Falcons almost winning.
Yeah. Oh gosh. We can't talk.
Can't talk about that.
Yeah.
We can be talking about that all season. The Falcons.
I just lost a couple of viewers. Sorry for that.
All right. So to our listeners, let's get to know Eric and Enrique a little bit. I think we already have, but really quick, Eric, tell us about your role at JOC and a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, I was thank you for having me back. I had a lot of fun on the last I was with you, Scott, and so I cover technology for Journal of Commerce. It's a B2B publication focusing on global trade, logistics, and that includes domestic transportation, global transportation, ocean, air. My job is to primarily help shippers, but also all the service providers that cater to shippers understand what kind of technology is out there, how things are changing, and what's interesting and what they sort of don't need to be paying too much attention to at this point. That's probably as important as what they do need to be. So
undoubtedly.
That's a great point, because we're getting overwhelmed. We talk about it all the time. We're getting overwhelmed with noise, and trying to find the signals that business leaders do need to pay attention to is getting more and more challenging. So good stuff there, Eric. Welcome back. All right, Enrique, tell us about what the Vector team is up to. Big friends of the show over there.
Yeah, no. So my background's in strategy consulting. I worked for the Boston Consulting Group before starting Vector Global Logistics. And Vector is an international logistics company with a very unique results-based culture and a passion to give back. We enjoy working with a lot of different companies and build long-term relationships with all of them. But mainly, we're really trying to change the world, and that's kind of what motivates us on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, we're working hard. It's been a challenging year, but there's been a lot of opportunities as well. So
yep. So
I can't complain.
If anyone hasn't caught any of the Logistics with Purpose series that Enrique and the team are on, let me just say this, Greg, and I think I can say this on behalf of you. I'm very careful of that. When Enrique says change the world, that's not lip service. That's what the team and the culture is built to do. And we're biased because we love working with the team, but that Logistics with Purpose series, bringing on folks that are really helping so many and moving the needle, that's real talk, isn't it, Greg?
That's how we coined the phrase "give forward."
That's right.
A lot of companies give back. Enrique and the folks at Vector, they give first. So we started calling it "give forward," right? Yeah, I mean, the culture there is fantastic. Of course, we're in very close proximity physically with the folks at Vector. Our original studio was actually in the office you're standing in right now, right? So
right here.
So we've gotten to see it in action, and it's inspiring to say the least. Agreed.
And Eric, that song "Memories" that we were talking pre-show, that puts us right back. I mean, it's amazing. The world gets so small when you start piecing things together. Hey, let's share a few comments from the audience here. So Sylvia is talking about coffee. I send out 30 pounds of One Nation coffee to my customers for International Coffee Day. And she says, # support local veteran-owned businesses one at a time. I love that, Sylvia. Chris Jolly talking back on sports. Can someone teach my Minnesota Twins to win a playoff game? Well, I'll tell you, Chris,
we're not the
Twins,
teachers, that's for sure.
And I wouldn't teach the Twins after Kent Herbeck pulled Ron Gantz's leg off first base either, Chris. You probably remember that.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of
Series
from Atlanta fans. And the answer is probably no, unfortunately, Chris.
So Sylvia also said, and of course I'm kidding, Twins are a neat group this year.
I'm not kidding.
So Eric, I know you got plenty of fans of the great work y'all do over at the JOC, but Sylvia is a big fan. And one more point about the JOC, because one of our friends of the show, it's been on numerous times, Kathy Mara Robertson. I know that she collaborates with the JOC team, and she's a fascinating, always full of insights and the know what's going on in the industry. And we love collaborating with Kathy too. Okay. We've talked sports. We've gotten to know Eric and Enrique, check. And the dog back behind the scenes is going to give us Braves updates as long as they're winning, so we can check that off too. Let's talk logistics and coffee. So as after I've had my 18 cups this morning, we celebrated
let's
this
face
week.
it, that's what people are here to hear about is
that's right.
Coffee, right?
Coffee. So same week, you got National Coffee Day here in the States. You've got International Coffee Day today. And coffee is something that unites the world, and we need plenty of that these days.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the hard-hitting subject of your favorite coffee and how you drink it before we talk logistics and coffee. So Eric, give us a 411.
Yeah, really bad planning. This is why no one trusts actual supply chains with me. I just write about it. I finished my entire pot of coffee before we even went on today. So I did not plan that out. So you'll just have to pretend that I'm. So favorite coffee is probably, actually, I've been really into mocha pot coffee these days. So it's this old steel contraption that I guess lots of people in Europe use. I think it makes awesome coffee because it's sort of like somewhere in between a really good cup of an espresso, as it's not as acidic as espresso, so it's a little smoother, but it's really rich. Like one cup is as satisfying as a whole pot, basically. So that's what I make on the weekends because it takes a little more, TLC. But normally on a everyday basis, I just throw in a bunch of grounds and have the big old pot. I would like to give a shout out to a local roaster in the area though that I use called Swings. That's been in Alexandria, Virginia forever. They might have even been based in DC originally, but they roast amazing beans. So I probably destroy the beautiful beans that they roast. But even when I do a bad job, it tastes good. So
love that. Love that. There's so many great local coffee shops. I mean, that whole business model, we love it. We've had Z Beans Coffee on before, Enrique. What a great story there. But all right, Enrique, what's your preference when it comes to coffee and how you drink it?
Well, brutally honest, I actually don't love coffee too much. I have actually gotten to know coffee and I love the experience and the aroma and just making and the coffee more than actually tasting the coffee. So my preference when it comes to coffee is really just anything new, and then I'll add a lot of those sugary creamers to make sure they taste a little bit better. But I love we've worked with a lot of good companies that are shipping coffee beans, and I actually have to give a shout out to Counterculture that's here at King Plow, and I have a lot of friends like you two that love the coffee, and so I've been getting a little bit more I guess schooled in coffee and the culture behind coffee, and it's just fascinating and definitely something that I enjoy doing, even if I don't necessarily love the taste of it.
Yes. Well, that's okay too. We all have different tastes. I probably was spoiled early on. My grandparents would give me coffee milk, right? A little bit of coffee with a ton of milk. Go. So it was wired in my DNA at an early age. And now my wife and I drink at least one pot every day. So, all right, Greg, what about you?
So I don't drink a lot of coffee. I, like Enrique, love the smell. I would have coffee beans open throughout the house all the time if I could. Not as big on the taste, but when I do drink it, I'm more of a Beastie Boys type drinker. I like my sugar with coffee and cream. So
nice, Greg. Always love it. All right, let's hear a couple of comments here. I think
for the month of November. I was thinking that this morning as we go into October. So
yeah. Well, it is, and it's been cool here in Atlanta, so it has been good for sipping on the back porch. And last week, I was in Florida where it was 90 degrees every day. You woke up sweating. So it's been a really interesting transition to fall.
We are ready for fall, at least in this household. We're ready for fall. All right. So Larry says, and welcome, Larry. Best coffee on earth is Good Morning Americas from Coffee Campesino in Americus, Georgia. Black.
I love that name.
Nothing in it.
they win prizes just for the name.
Agreed. Sylvia says French press. Hans, all right, you might have to help me here.
Yeah.
Hanseaten Mischung.
Yes.
Yeah.
Enrique, well done. From Hamburg, it looks like. Tastes like freedom. One Nation Coffee in Charleston. Good stuff there, Enrique. Oh, Corinne is here. Corinne is via Facebook. Of course, Corinne is our new host of Tech Talk. I love coffee enough for the both of us. I love that, Corinne. And then let's see. I think we had one more comment I wanted to share with y'all. Comes from Neil, the first timer. Mocha pot coffee, is that legal in all 50 states?
That's just to be clear, it's MOKAPOT. Is the receptacle. It's not any of the ingredients. So
yeah, and that is no small task, cooking or making coffee in one of those. I brought a couple of those back from Italy, and
you got to watch it. If you take your eye off it for 5 seconds, you got
Yes.
You got stuff all over.
It is the opposite of a watch pot never boils. An unwatched pot boils way too fast.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Well, one more shout out to Memory. So Memory, we love having her as part of our live streams. Memory actually said something earlier to you, Eric. I think she caught one of your previous shows. Might have been on Let's Talk Supply Chain.
I was
earlier
on
this week.
earlier this week. Yep.
Good people there. And Memory, of course, she's a practitioner based in Johannesburg, and she says, I'm going to be unpopular for my go-to drink. Is it Rooibos tea with lemon? Hey, it sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Popular in our book.
I love tea, actually.
I love that stuff. Yeah, it's good.
All right. So now that we've gotten everyone, a lot of folks' favorites out there, let's kind of shift back to the kind of the business behind coffee, right? The business behind what allows us to enjoy our favorite cup of coffee, each morning and other times of the day. So Enrique, I want to start with you. We mentioned that you work with Vector works with a lot of organizations, a lot of different sectors, but it just so happens we've gotten to know a lot of the folks a lot of folks in the coffee industry you work with via the Logistics with Purpose series. So give us a few observations about working, especially from a supply chain perspective in coffee.
Yes, no, for sure. And once again, thanks for having me here. And coffee is a very interesting crop, right? It's a very volatile commodity. The price-wise is actually very important for many, many communities around the world. As people know, of course, it's cultivated in the bean belt or between the tropics. And I Googled this before the show. The price now is at about $1.04 per pound. So that people know and understand a little bit more how the flow of the shipping goes. It's I'll just give you a couple of points around the coffee industry as a whole. So production is about 176 million 60 kilogram bags, and it's 9 million higher than last year. Brazil is the largest with 68 million. Vietnam follows with 30, then Central America and Mexico with 18, Colombia 14 million. Most of those 14 million end up here in the U.S. and Indonesia and some other smaller countries account for the rest. So
let me ask a quick question, Enrique.
Go ahead.
Vietnam is the second largest producer of coffee. Did I hear you right?
According to Google, it is.
Wow. Okay.
But and a lot of the production, of course, stays in the home countries. I think Brazil, out of the 68 million that they produce, 50% of that actually stays in Brazil. As opposed to Colombia, they export almost 95% of their coffee.
Interesting.
When it comes to the demand, which is basically the other component that you have to consider to connect the origin to the destination and then kind of see how the flow is going from a shipping logistics standpoint, it's Europe is 15 million, and they account for 45% of the world imports of coffee.
And Italy is probably 45%.
I should have actually drilled down into that, and but yeah, you're probably right about that. And so Europe definitely the largest coffee consumer in the world, and then the United States with 27 million. So yeah, go ahead.
Interesting and surprising figures in some of those there.
Yeah. Vietnam's really surprising, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. So from a getting things moved standpoint, Enrique, I know that y'all work a lot, especially with growers in Central and South America, if I'm not mistaken. But what are some of the components of working in the coffee industry from a supply chain perspective that some of us may not truly appreciate or even know?
Well, I think the price of coffee actually is one of the biggest drivers when it comes to like shipping coffee from one part of the world to the other. And it's an open market, as everyone knows. So I think that actually has a lot to do with that. The other thing is, of course, weather patterns and changes that affect the crops and the agricultural part of coffee. But it's a very interesting crops, as I've actually gotten to know through some of the clients that we ship with and some of my friends that are into coffee, because that price of coffee actually can change everything in the community and can help the community from like having them a sustainable income that can allow them to to have schools and hospitals and education, to really forcing them to do other more drastic things like maybe immigrating. And probably some of the listeners and you guys remember the conflict or immigration issue that we were facing in the United States from all these farmers coming from Guatemala through Mexico into the US. And it became a huge politicized issue, which I'm not going to get into, but that could have been prevented because it's correlated to the price of coffee. So the price of coffee in Guatemala was lower that year, and it pushed all these different people that don't have any other way of surviving to try to search for something better. So as someone at Thrive Farmers told us, a really good company that actually deals with a slightly different way of having a revenue sharing model for the farmers and making sure the price that they're paying to the farmers is always better than the market price, told us some of these immigration issues that we so much debate about could be resolved if we actually just put a little bit more money towards agriculture, and coffee is one of them. I also want to point out Communityconnect. Communityconnect is another of the clients that we work with. JT, he started this, and their approach is a little bit different than Thrive Farmers because they have a little more of a community approach towards the coffee that they grow in Nicaragua, and they have used coffee to really empower the community around them to the point that they now have like soccer schools and hospitals and churches and housing and wells. So they use the coffee as a economic driver in the community, which is incredible to me, and they've done an amazing job. And also Seabeans Coffee, as we were talking about before, Scott, their coffee comes from Ecuador, and Shane's doing a fantastic job with the farmers down there too. Agreed.
A quick factoid from the dog here. So Clay says coffee is the world's second most traded commodity behind crude oil. How about that?
Wow.
Good catch there, Clay. All right, we're going to bring Eric in. I want to get some of his observations here. But before we do, Greg, one of the neat things about one of the companies that Enrique just shared from a startup standpoint, if you remember the story that from one of the companies where this entrepreneur bought his first really big coffee beans order, right?
Yes.
And this is before, and we're not making fun, but he really had a good time. So. Yes, that's right. So Eric, this entrepreneur placed a big order, but really the logistics and customs and everything that these big orders have to go through was very new to him. And so it landed, I think, in the port in Miami, and he thought he was just going to drive down there and throw it in back of the truck and back up to Georgia. And he learned, he learned quickly the value of not just a customs broker, but a freight forwarder, and how the relationships and the policies, everything you've got to do. Yeah. And he says it was his, to paraphrase, one of his most expensive lessons learned, and certainly his most expensive bags of coffee, Greg.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So, Greg, why don't we dive into Eric's POV here a little bit?
Could I ask? I've been curious about this all year because I'm taking my personal experience and I can't extrapolate that across at least the U.S. Has there been any change in terms of demand consumption patterns simply because people are probably buying more bags of coffee to make at home versus going to their local coffee shop? Are you seeing any kind of change in supply chain patterns because of that?
So production was at a record high compared to last year, and I think there were like 10 million more bags produced and shipped, and so my guess, and I don't know it for a fact, but I think my guess it is a lot of people probably have been actually consuming not only coffee but some other drinks as well, a bit more predominantly since we've all been quarantined, right? Yeah. So it's a good point. We should definitely look a little bit closer into that. Maybe Clay can help us Google a couple of things.
Cure our boredom. I just make another pot of coffee or something else, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you're home, and you really can't drive anywhere, so you might as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know the numbers, but it's not unlike the consumption of grocery goods versus the consumption of food service goods. The way that coffee is selling has shifted more to home package type.
Right.
So my one of my companies, Blue Ridge, has Community Coffee as a customer. So that's that's chicory coffee, which apparently, I don't know. Like I said, I'm no expert. Apparently that's good. But,
based just outside of New Orleans or in New Orleans.
That's right.
So
that's right. And their demand has shifted pretty dramatically from, the big bagged food service type for big machines to grounds and beans for home. Yeah.
So Eric, also, Corinne says coffee packaging has been a lot different, especially with large retailers having only drive-through operations. Good stuff there. And Clay's also going to dive into it. He says lots of main exporters were COVID hotspots. He's looking into the actual numbers, so we'll see what they get back. All right.
So what happens, guys? You invite me on, I start asking questions, like start gravitating.
No, yeah, that's good.
So.
We love that journalistic spirit. So let us leverage that a little bit. So freight tech has been really, really hot, right? And all kinds of supply chain technology has been brought to the forefront because of this. But tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, what you are seeing or hearing about that is news, I guess. Those things we ought to pay attention to in regard to tech.
So let me just take you into something like some thinking that I've been doing big picture about where we are. And let me frame the reference for context. So, when we talk about supply chain, I'm looking at a component of global supply chains. So I'm looking at, kind of post-production, when goods become freight all the way to some sort of endpoint, historically DC or a warehouse, maybe a store with that type of space, more and more end consumer. So I'm
goods to consumer, correct?
Supply chain, end to end, like some folks do.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that's been really interesting from a technology perspective is it feels like there was a thesis a few years ago that a lot of money that was channeled toward technology was going to either wipe away or create consolidation in the forwarding market and domestically in the brokerage market. And there have been acquisitions and there's been activity, but I don't think it's been an excessive amount of activity. And I don't think we've seen the consolidation that was sort of predicted from technology entering the fray. And I think actually what's happened is there's been a rebound of investment that's gone toward technologies that empower existing forwarders and empower existing brokers, and has basically democratized technology in a way that wasn't available 5-6 years ago. So it's never easy to start a business. It's never easy to start a forwarding or a brokerage business. I'm not suggesting that at all, but the barriers have not become higher, and if anything, they've become lower because it's easier to adopt technology. And there's more options on the market than there were 5-6 years ago. So that to me is a really interesting development. I've sort of characterized this as we've moved from one fragmented market to a different fragmented market, but we're not seeing a huge consolidation.
So interestingly, I hear a lot in the marketplace about creating, I don't have to state this, I don't have a dog in this fight. So a lot about creating efficiency in the marketplace. And it appears that both shippers and carriers believe that brokers create the greatest inefficiency in the marketplace in terms of, unlike a freight forwarder who has a lot of value added services, these are people I'm going to grossly underestimate what they do. They're essentially creating relationships, right, and making connections. Have you seen anything approaching creating efficiency around the reduction of impact or elimination of brokers in the marketplace for technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If we boil down what a broker does to its sort of bare essence, it's finding capacity, selling that capacity on to for a profit to a shipper that has a load that needs to be moved. Right. It's not rocket science, and it never will be rocket science. So I think we don't need to think of it necessarily in binary terms. Like it's inefficient or it's efficient, right? There are incremental levels of efficiency that are created by not necessarily by technology. You could hire someone who's 10% better at finding capacity or convincing a carrier to give it capacity, and that's an increase in efficiency for you, right? So. Yeah. We tend to think of technology as this sort of like binary switch that all of a sudden everything becomes great, but it's not. And so It is hard to capture that level of nuance across an industry with thousands of participants, across an industry where there are some people that are excellent at marketing themselves and have a huge budget to market themselves, and other companies that have a huge amount of technology spend but don't talk about it a lot, and then everyone in between, right? So there's no magic secret here. It's basically you as a shipper need to figure out, you shouldn't be like a disloyal customer, but you should be constantly on the lookout to see if there's someone else who could potentially serve you better. And if you're not doing that, you're kind of,
doing a disservice to yourself, right?
Opportunities on the table, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we have got some interesting comments in the discussion, and let me remind everybody, let's play nice in the sandbox. Professions, let's not kick too hard on professions. Yeah. So we've got some brokers in the comments, and we've got a lot of non-brokers, of course, and shippers. A couple comments here. Abaro says brokers are still very essential in the supply chain. And then kind of a prevailing contrary comment to that. Let me straighten out my vocabulary a little bit. Jim Weber says brokers are travel agents. And how have brokers not been eliminated via the internet? So let's play nice, everybody. But
well, I think there's valid. I think there's valid positions on both sides, right? As I said, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I think what we'll see because efficiency in a marketplace can take on a lot of forms,
right?
It could be a niche approach, it could be a cost-effective approach, it could be a number of things, but I think we'll start to see the impact of marketplaces or tech, if you want to call it technology, on those things that have a more, if you are really just a travel agent, you're at risk. Let's face it.
Right.
So, and companies are smart. They're in business to stay in business. So they'll evolve into more of a forwarder or more value-added services that produce value that allow them to differentiate from the straight transaction creation.
You could say that brokers are best positioned to bring innovative solutions to their customers and to their carrier base than either the shipper or the carrier themselves, because they don't own the cargo, they don't own the assets. They can funnel all of their money toward making those two things that they do as efficient as possible, right? So I sort of start from the standpoint of, if everybody focuses on their core like specialty and outsources the things that they're not the best at,
right?
That's probably should be the starting position until you find a good reason not to be in that situation.
Great point. And it goes back to the example we just used a second ago. As an entrepreneur, like I'll speak from personal experience, there's plenty of things I don't want to become the expert in, and I'm willing to pay more and build a relationship with the people that know those areas better. And I think that's where, to Jim's question about how they add value, I think there's millions of cases each week where there's a lot of value there. So Eric, we've kind of gotten your point, your way in there. Enrique, let's hear,
we haven't heard from you. Right?
No, well, it's very interesting what everyone's saying. And I think that to Eric's point, I think technology is going to play a crucial part in all this, right? I think it's just the algorithm and the value of the algorithm that these brokers are using, that it's at some point going to be incredibly important, relevant, and definitely adds value. So I think you can find brokers that don't add value, but you can find brokers that add a lot of value. And I think it depends on how those companies are pivoting towards adding value beyond what we all believe it's going to happen, which is technology taking over that part of the analyzing the demand, analyzing the supply and trying to make those marketplaces for people to participate in, right? So it's I think it's a very interesting future. As Eric pointed out, there's a lot of capital going into technology, and I think we're just going to see maybe something similar to what we saw with maybe Uber when they started, right? They're a broker, basically. Right. I mean, they don't really add much value more than their technology, but then that kind of prompted the market to then bring Lyft, and some other companies started to realize that they could provide some other benefits. And so I think the brokers are essential because they just keep the competitiveness of everything going.
So well put. Let's add a couple comments here. We got some interesting discussion taking place. I'm trying to work through these real quick. And Greg, I want to get you to weigh back in. So starting with Chris Jolly, he says, when there's last minute changes to customers' freight and the assets cannot accommodate those changes, brokers find additional capacity to fulfillment. This is a basic overview. Good stuff there. Memory says, I think there's still a need for brokers, particularly if they're adding value to transactions, but I think they increase costs of transactions. Good point there.
That's the efficiency that the market will correct, though.
Right.
Correct.
Where they're not adding value but increasing costs, the market will.
They're going to go away.
Correct that with technology.
Yep, good points. Mr. Goldklang says the importer can be an individual who has no logistics experience, who needs assistance over a large corporation like a Nike, he names. Keith, great to have you on yesterday's webinar, by the way. I appreciate your questions. He says we should have Nicole Glenn back on. You know, Nicole came on with Jamin and one more discussion, and she runs a freight operation out of the Dallas area, I believe. So, Keith, good point there. Audrey says, Stefan, I would let's see here. Some people want to hand off that service, talking about brokering transportation. Some people like no frills, do it yourself, self-service, and some people need to lean on third-party providers as an extension of the team. So it kind of goes back to the coffee discussion. Everybody's got a different preference, a different capacity, a different budget, a different, and all really, especially in global supply chain, a different need, right? So well put there, Audrey. I think that's important perspective to keep in front.
And Scott, this goes back to the whole fragmentation thing, right? Where it's really hard for one type of service provider to be the thing that every single type of shipper needs. Depending, right? I mean, they all have different characteristics of what they're trying to accomplish. They're a small part of a larger organization. They may have a different philosophy that they're working under in terms of outsourcing things or not, so that's the thing that makes it hard to create this like sort of dominant service provider in the industry that caters to every single type of shipper, right? So
well put, well said, Eric. Good stuff there. And Sylvia also makes a great point. Please discern, one of our favorite words, between customs brokers and truck brokers, two completely different businesses. That's a great point there, Sylvia.
Yeah, one is essentially a marketplace, right? And the other is effectively doing the work for you, as you're talking about. Those things you want to outsource.
Customs brokers helping get your imports cleared with CBP or whatever the regulatory agency is. Truck broker is helping you find, as a shipper, helping you find capacity. So
right.
Yep.
Which is what our coffee customer from Scott's anecdote was referring to, right? You do need the customs brokers. Otherwise, importing into this country or any other country for that matter, it's really not possible.
Yep. And speaking, Nicole's ears may have been burning. There she is. Great points. Niche is important to identify, to really cater to that need of what the shipper has. Absolutely, Nicole. And I should say that word niche in my as a gentleman I worked with. He's Ray Mason, the late Ray Mason, great Scottish immigrant here. Worked with him for a number of years. Had so much respect, and I can still hear him say niche and pronounce that appropriately. So we misread.
I've got a great story that relates to this. We recently had a bathroom remodel done, and I don't know if you guys have had a remodel done recently, but there's a thing, instead of the wire rack that you hang from the shower thing, now everyone puts these things called niches or niches in, right? Where you put all your shampoo bottles and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The number of ways that word can be pronounced by different culture is
right.
almost uncountable, right?
Yeah.
Niche.
Well, and the number of
Like
ways,
walk, it's incredible.
Is it Nietzsche or is it Nietzsche?
and the number of ways I could lose a golf match to Ray Mason was also multiple too. So we lost a good one a few years back. But great point there, Eric. Great story. All right, so as we kind of
just very quickly on the value that I believe brokers add is also because we've been looking at this from the perspective of the shipper and the I guess consignee, if you will, but the truck drivers. It's an important opportunity for truck drivers out there that just driving their trucks, and I think this gives them an opportunity to increase their business and to bring more money to their family. So I think that again, technology will plays a big role in it, but I think brokers also offer jobs to people. So we have to make sure that we kind of account for that as well in the whole equation, because truck drivers are incredibly important in the supply chain. I think that they're the, I guess, unsung heroes, if you will, almost as important I was going to say, if not more, but like firefighters and policemen and all the deliveries, all the truck drivers, they're especially throughout this year and the pandemic, they're really the ones that kept the economy alive, and they're struggling every day. So I think brokers help that particular part of the population too, and they are incredibly important.
Exceptional call out, and that's certainly one of the silver linings. We'll beat the drum, we'll beat the dead horse, because it's so important. It's so neat to see the recognition that the front line in global supply chain has gotten in recent months, and hopefully we can keep it there, because to your point, Enrique, as Greg and I have talked about a lot, they kept things moving. And I like to say, for a lot of folks that really had to stay in their homes for extended periods of time, it protected the psyche, because they could get stuff delivered. Mm-hmm. So, but Greg, I want to, as we start to wind down, we're going to make sure our audience knows how to connect with Eric and Enrique here momentarily. But what's one of your final thoughts in this very passionate discussion we're having?
I would say that the creating efficiency in the marketplace is inevitable, and it will accrue to the benefit of everyone who wants to pay less or make more. And if I'm a broker, I'm looking for how to add value, and I'm thinking about some of those deals where I make an 83% margin or whatever, and I might go home feeling a little guilty about that, because that's going away. That will be filtered out of the marketplace, and it will be equalized. But again, there's plenty of room for people to do this. Look, so many markets have been made efficient. Markets that have much more complex, require much more complex analysis and algorithms than even transportation, though it is unbelievably complex. So it will happen. It's just a matter of how companies adapt to it, and over what segment of the marketplace it happens. Right. It will be the most, I don't know how to say it. It will be the most inefficient, the most egregious profit margins that disappear, like it is in every other marketplace. Right. Just like the stock market. I mean, stockbrokers used to make hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on shares, and arguably you need a ton of expertise to do that. But that has been completely automated to the point where it costs cents, pennies now to trade stocks.
There's a little bit of ticker tape. There's a little bit of typewriter. There's a little bit in the rotary phone. There's a little bit of that in every single sector. And that's what I think, Greg, that's the point you're making. That's what will be automated in some way, shape, or form, because it doesn't add value like it used to.
Companies will adapt. Look, they'll adapt. It's not an attack on an industry. It's an economic inevitability, and companies will adapt, and they'll deliver services that the marketplace values, and everyone will be fine, except for those ones like Sears who hold on to their old business model. Right. Well, I mean, you have to evolve with the marketplace.
Right. All right. So Eric and Enrique, I knew that we needed a lot, like a 4-hour discussion because of some of the passions and the POVs we had here today, but we'll have to have you back. In the meantime, Eric, I'm sure we're going to have some folks that want to, follow you and your reporting and your analysis via JOC. Y'all have a slew of great events over the years. Some of them now may be virtual, of course, but tell us, how can we connect with you?
Sure. Easiest way, to read the stuff is at joc.com. Very simple. My email address is eric.johnson@ihsmarket.com. markit.com. That's our parent company.
MARKIT.
MARKIT. Very thanks for correcting me on that. Twitter, if you like some spicy takes, I'm at LogTech Eric, LOGTECH Eric. And since you called it out, we have a couple webcasts coming up later this month that you can find out about on JOC that are dealing specifically with logistics technology. So I'd encourage you all to sign up. They're both free. So
I'd be stunned if anyone here is not familiar with JOC, right? And if they're not, they should be.
Well, you know, and Eric is very well known, right, within the analysis and adult leadership space. But if you're not following him, especially on Twitter, that's where I think I first met Eric before he came on the show. Spicy Takes is right. He tells it like it is. He's got a little Greg White in him, or vice versa. And I love that. We all need that, right? So check him out, LogTech Eric, and then, of course, JOC.com. But Eric, a pleasure. As always. Enrique, how can folks track you down?
The best way of actually reaching out to me or us at Vector is through our webpage at vectorgl.com. That is www.vectorgl.com.
Brand new, cutting edge.
Brand new, relaunch just a couple of months ago. Yep. Please check it out.
Love it. All right. There you go. How about that?
Hey, we're going to use technology, right?
Well, really have enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have to continue it. And we'll have to get Jamin involved next time. As we mentioned on the front end here, he's kind of our resident transportation logistics guru. And I'm sure he would have really.
He's a Lakers fan too. So
that's right. That is right. I completely forgot about that. Well, Eric Johnson with JOC, Enrique Alvarez with Vector Global. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be reconnecting with you both soon.
Guys,
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great to get to hear your expertise.
Man, that was great. I learned, as everyone knows that knows me, I'm certainly no freight expert or guru.
Yeah.
That's not where I spent the bulk of my industry experience in. And I love hearing, and from the comment, we had a ton of great POV from the comments, right?
Yeah. I think it's good to have those kind of perspectives. Look, I can only really speak to the marketplace inevitabilities, right, and to macroeconomics of a marketplace, but it's good to get everyone's perspective on where everyone lands in terms of the market ecosystem.
Right. That is right. Okay. So now, as we kind of wrap up in the next 5-10 minutes or so, we want to share a couple of observations from yesterday's outstanding webinar, speaking of learning a lot of things. And then we're going to give folks an opportunity on some of the upcoming events. We've got Cook and Greg. So, Greg, just to table set just a smidge. So yesterday, Greg and I hosted two outstanding, been there, done that gurus, Jeff Cashman with Chief Operating Officer with Gray Orange, and Cindy Lago, Vice President, who does a lot of things in the supply chain space, right? With Capgemini. So before I share Sofia's, and hopefully Sofia's still with us, she does a great write-up and recap of some different events and sessions she is a part of. But Greg, give us a couple of your key takeaways from yesterday's.
Well, I mean, to me, the greatest takeaway was not just the observations, but it was an actual very brief game plan of how to tackle the changes that have occurred in fulfillment, in retail, in the marketplace. And I think it was probably a stark awakening for a lot of our 100 or so participants. I don't know how many we wound up having, but it was a stark awakening for a lot of those companies to realize that fragility is a more prominent word in supply chain and in fulfillment than resiliency. And that real resiliency has effectively been redefined by this crisis. So I think that was really good. And at the same time, I think that Cindy and Jeff, they really brought it back home to what can you do about it? How do you attack it? How do you prepare your organization to do it? And then they made an offer to actually help you for nothing. Spend 45 minutes with those two pros, right? To figure out where you stand and at least get a high level framework for a potential game plan.
Yep. All about the resilience maturity framework, kind of get a sense of where you are and what might be a approach moving forward. Because Greg, as you put it, and as they talked about yesterday, if you're not resilient, you're fragile.
Yeah,
and very
that's right.
few could lay claim before, and still it's a small crowd now that truly can claim that they've got a very mature sense of resilience baked into their supply chain. So, Gary was a go ahead. Gary was a big fan. So Gary tuned in with us yesterday. Great webinar, even if you're not in retail. Great point, Gary, because I may have maybe promoted it a little too hard that it's retail, new retail, when really there were so many transferable, regardless of the sector, lessons learned in yesterday's session. And to that point, Greg, I just had to completely rip this off of LinkedIn. Sofia Rivas Herrera shared some of her key takeaways. And I'm not going to read through all this, but pay attention here, Greg. One of the things that Jeff said is don't expect your old technology to do new stuff. And how many of us, raise your hand if you're guilty, I'm guilty as charged, expect something you may have acquired just a few years back to magically update, even there's no updates coming. I mean, that's probably a pretty prevalent expectation for many, huh, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, and it's natural, right? So many people think we could have worked harder to overcome this disruption. And the truth is, so many people, as we have harped on pretty much since March 13th, the old technologies, the old ways, the manual, the spreadsheet, the paper processes, they are not going to keep up with, and never have, but have never been pressured like they have in this day and age. And that's a lot of what we're discussing in that session, by the way. So we should share how folks can find that. Absolutely. Also, and we'll drop that in the comment section. So Nicole, you can find that, but it's worth going back to.
Yep. Nicole and Memory are both asking about the recording. So yeah, we're going to upload the recording to YouTube in the next couple of days. It'll be found there on the Supply Chain Now channel. And we'd welcome you all to check it out. Great session. And one of the things that Sofia shared in the same, all this analysis in one LinkedIn post. And I think I've got a direct link to Sofia's LinkedIn post in the comments here, show notes. She used this great image, comes from a parable in India, where you've got a bunch of blind individuals that have been charged to describe an elephant. And if y'all notice, of course, they all have one very specific piece that they are inspecting. And it goes straight to how we all assume so many things on just a limited piece of the puzzle. And this got a lot of people's attention, got a lot of people's comments and on Sofia's post. And it was just a well done recap. So Sofia, really appreciate you sharing. Great to have you be a part of the session yesterday and asking the questions around change management, Greg, if you remember, and how do we get leaders to embrace the
change that's necessary.
Right. Yep. That's right. All right. So let's move on as we wrap up here. A couple things coming up. Greg, awesome interview we had yesterday morning. Tell us about what Petter was talking about.
So it was worth getting up early for, and it was early. So Peter Tuborg, the CEO of Arla Foods, a dairy cooperative based in Denmark, but really distributing goods all over the world. And we talked about sustainability and how important that was, not just for their specific means of production, because they are a cooperative, the participants, the farmers, ranchers that are involved in their process and production, and how they have incentivized everyone in their supply chain to create a more sustainable solution. And their goal to be, and remember, they are using natural materials, cows and whatnot, and growing grasses to feed them, how they intend to be carbon neutral in the next 20, 30 years. So no small task there. Great initiative, very straightforward approach.
Bacon it in the culture, that he spoke to, how that's the only way they're going to be able to hit these BHAGs, these big, hairy, audacious goals. Great interview. It was early. It wasn't long. We didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, it's the best 16 minutes you'll spend on sustainability.
That's right. Hey, Eric mentioned in kind of the back channel comments that parable in India, Small World. His son was recently learning that same parable. So evidently in India, it's very well known. I just came across it for the first time through Sofia's POV share on LinkedIn. So good stuff. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, Scott. Back to the topic at hand.
That's my job, is to get off on a tangent.
So Reuters events, with this interview with Petter will be part of, is part of the Supply Chain USA Virtual 2020 event, live virtual event, October 7th and the 8th. And it's free. You get a free taster pass to take in all the 6 keynotes. Got the link in the show notes. Y'all check that out. Of course, we can't get through a promo for this without mentioning Sandra McQuillan, one of our favorites here, who is
Right.
EVP and Chief Supply Chain Officer at Mondelez International. All right. So, Greg, we also have an upcoming panel session that we're going to be moderating at AME, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. And reshoring is probably going to be a big part of the discussion, don't you think?
It is undoubtedly reshoring, nearshoring, onshoring, all kinds of shoring. We're shoring up manufacturing. So, look, we have talked a lot about fulfillment. We've talked a lot about retail. We've even talked a lot about consumers and transportation. It's time to talk manufacturing. So I really appreciate Kim and the team at AME bringing this to us and letting us help them moderate it, because this is an important topic, and it's an important tie-in to the overall end-to-end supply chain.
Agreed. Well put. Hey, Abaro mentions that they've got Supply Chain Canada coming up next week. Hey, drop that link in the comments. I've seen a lot of promo about that. Daniel Stanton, I think, has been sharing a lot of information about that. Would love for you to drop that in the comments. It's all about sharing information. These are some of the things we're involved with, and we'd welcome you all to share some of what you're seeing resource-wise. Okay, we're getting close here, but we got 2 webinars to share. This one is about control towers and how can you set one up in 30 days, Greg? 30 days.
In the briefest I can be, this is 2 companies who understand that good data is the key to control towers, and having goals, business goals that drive back into how the control towers operate and what they deliver to users is absolutely critical. They both get it. We've had them both on the show before, Tim Judge and the team at Rate Links, Nate and Shannon, and it's definitely worth understanding. It's more than just presenting reports. It is also presenting solutions.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we got to pickle myself a little bit. There's some comments about some different pronunciations, and memory is daring me, I think, to take a hack at one of them. And
I'm not even going for that one.
Scott will butcher that one.
Monoko that's what I would go with.
Yes. So remember, you're right. Sometimes I have a hard time pronouncing my own name. So I was born with
the
it.
N is silent, Scott. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well,
that's what I went with anyway.
So y'all check out the October 6th webinar, no charge, a lot of good stuff, to Greg's point, from Agilytics and Rate Links. And finally, really would welcome, this is a series we stood up as COVID was really, at least here in the States, was changing things. And it's a series where we really preserve some of the tougher topics to talk about. At the time, in the leadoff session, it was about a lot of the pain, both professionally and frankly personally, that folks were struggling with in the earliest days of the lockdown and kind of back during that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
For this topic, Greg, on October 28th, we're really talking about equity in Fortune 500, right? And what some thought leaders and equity advocates are doing to in their own way and move the needle and start changing the culture. So this is really meant to be a very interactive discussion around equity. So bring your thoughts, bring your challenges, your experiences. We really want to make it a balanced exchange between Elba and Anya and our audience. So would welcome y'all. You register for this. We'll make sure there's a way that you can share comments, or even if you got a microphone connected to your PC, share verbally. But
You are not required to stand up, but we would appreciate it if you sound off.
Love that.
You're welcome to
Greg.
stand up if you would like.
Yes, we're going to incorporate that into our promotion here. But October 28th, 12 p.m. It'll probably go about 90 minutes. But this has been some of our most rewarding conversations and opportunities to learn and exchange perspectives. So y'all join us for that. If we missed something, check us out at supplychainnowradio.com. Shoot Amanda a note, Amanda at supplychainnowradio.com. Happy to serve as a resource as best that we can. All right, Greg, love the conversation with Eric and Enrique. There's so many different elements there that I wanted to dive deeper into, but I know time wouldn't allow. What was, give us your favorite thing here today.
I think we were effective at suckering people in by using coffee as bait. No, I mean, I'm glad we got to have that discussion. First of all, I'm a big fan of what the three companies that Enrique is working with are doing and trying to create, speaking of equity, create equity in that marketplace. Look, coffee farmers have been taken advantage of, to say the least, for a long time, and that there are people making a conscious effort to make that a more fair ecosystem is more than just noble. It's the right thing to do.
Yep.
And I think also I really appreciate having the discussion around the transportation ecosystem. How the heck we even got there, I don't know, but I'm glad that we did, and I think we all learned something from that. So that's my takeaway. Yep.
So
coffee and we learned something.
One last comment here. I think as an entrepreneur in a startup organization, early stage, and we all, if you can relate to that, what goes into that. And for us, our mission is creating and facilitating content and learning experiences and to give a voice to industry, not just the folks and the experts and the thought leaders that we feature, but to our audience, right? Because that POV is as important. And so really want to appreciate Sofia, that made our day. It makes my day. Whenever I see something that I know our team worked hard on to facilitate and produce and execute and deliver, and then to see just an intelligent professional participate and then share that with her network, that is so rewarding. So I learned a lot. I really appreciate folks like Sofia sharing this exchange of ideas and insights we have here. And that was certainly my highlight. Beyond, of course, we love Enrique, love Eric's perspective. I took, about 7 pages of notes, I think, on brokerage, Greg, and that whole industry. But really enjoyed it today. And Greg, all the links to what we shared are in the show notes. We try to make it easy, right? It's all about how many clicks?
Brilliant.
1 click, right?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was looking back. I was about to send a message to Memory to tell her where that is. It's in the show notes. So
in the show
sorry
notes
about that. You lost me there for a second.
1 click away. So big thanks to our audience.
How many clicks? Ask that again. How many clicks?
All right. So hey,
professional.
That's right. Go Braves. It looks like it is bottom of the third, still nothing. So here we go again. We'll see. Gosh. But big thanks to all the comments is what makes this stuff so rewarding. So really appreciate the participation. Y'all have a great week. On behalf of Greg White, our entire team here, hey, do good, give forward, but be the change that's needed regardless, despite it all. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now.